off. Let's start again. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Culturism, your one and only show on LinkedIn that comes to you every week, week in and week out, and talks about corporate culture. It talks about life, talks about love, and anything to do with human nature, because as we know, culture is human. So everything that impacts our lives in one way or the other will impact our work lives. And tonight we have a guest that I have known for a great number of years, and we've collaborated on many different projects in many different countries. I know in the video promoting this, I said I went to Indonesia with him. I think that's a big fat lie. I don't think I did go to Indonesia. I was in Singapore. I remember we went to Brisbane in Australia. We did a show in a forum in Kuala Lumpur, and we'll talk more about that with our guest for the notification that we are live, and I'm not receiving that yet, which is why I'm not bringing him on the stream just yet. If you're already in the show, please give us a shout out in the chat. Just tell me where you're from. Oh, we have from India, Sarika, namaste. We have somebody, we don't see who you are, LinkedIn user. We have, many people already. Muhammad Azim, who is tuning in. Yes, Sariska, it is a cultural exchange needs love, respect, and care for each other. What a wonderful way to say it. And with that, I shall bring in our guest for the day, Ian Bittern. How are you, Ian? Nice to have you.
I'm good, thank you. I'm very good, thank you. I'm here in sunny, well, not so sunny Manchester, UK. We don't have sun at this time of the year. Actually, we don't have sun much at all, but, not as you would call it. Interesting how you mentioned Indonesia.
Yes.
Because we didn't meet in Indonesia. I've only ever been to Indonesia once. And I decided when I was in Singapore for the first time to go to Indonesia for lunch. So I went to Batam with a friend of mine. We traveled over. We got off at the wrong stop, and we had to get a taxi into the town center. And then we came back, and we didn't realize that Indonesia is 1 hour time difference from Singapore. So I nearly missed my flight home. There you go. My story about Indonesia. So
nice. So that was the only time you've been in Indonesia, in Batam?
Unfortunately, yeah. I'd love to go.
That doesn't even count. Batam is a suburb of Singapore. It's just off. It's just a short boat ride, isn't it?
It is indeed, but I got an Indonesian stamp in my passport.
Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to this show. Yeah, you got a stamp on your passport. Proves you were in Indonesia. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome again to this show called Culturism, where week in and week out, I bring in personalities from all over the world to share with us their journey and their story on culture, corporate or otherwise. And my cat, Charlie, is trying to steal my food again. Stay there, Charlie. And Ian, as I said, is a grand friend of mine who we've worked together on several different conferences organized by ISPIM, the International Society for Professional Innovation Management. And before we get into that, ladies and gentlemen, if you've been following my shows, you know that this section is when we ask our guests really questions that should scare them. You should be scared, Ian, because some of these questions would really challenge you, and you don't know what they are, and we're going to ask you so that we can get a better glimpse of who you are really behind the facade, the persona, behind the profile on LinkedIn. We can find out what you do from your profile on LinkedIn. But now we're going to play a little game called 10 questions. The first question for you is, what makes you the most worried about life today in 2021? What are you worried about?
What am I worried about? I'm kind of worried about getting to see people again. I've been stuck here for a year now, and I'm kind of worried about, what it's going to be like going back out there and meeting people again, and how things are going to be different. These are tough times. we've none of us have had sort of social interaction for a whole year. So what's it going to be like when we get together again? Will there
Yeah.
be, mistrust of people? How are people going to learn or relearn how to interact with one another again? In a physical environment.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
kind of
That
my
is.
biggest worry at the moment.
So you've not been out at all this past.
Hardly, no,
It's a
hardly.
year now. Yeah, it's a year.
Yeah,
Wow. Because
hardly, hardly
I
left
went
the
to work
house.
today, and it's the first time I was on the train for, I don't know, 6 months maybe. So it does feel awkward. It's strange. It's different. So yeah, that is something to be worried about. Uh, Ian, how many cats are too many cats?
Oh, you can't have too many cats. I got three, the same as you. And
Yeah, I'm
you
getting
know what I
four.
like?
So
Yeah,
yeah.
you know what I like about them is that they, one of them actually chose us. I feel really honored about the fact that one of our cats chose us. He followed my daughter home one day and sat outside the back door, and he was still there the next day. I took him to the vet, and he got he had a microchip. He had some owners that had abandoned him, so I made a throwaway remark to the vet to say, we'll
Oh,
have him, and he's been a member of the household ever since. So you've probably seen quite a lot of him on my
wow.
posts. So, but the other two are around as
Yes,
well. They're
yes, you've
brother
seen
and
them both.
sister.
Okay. I have a mom and one brother and one sister, but we had another sister who got lost a couple of months ago, and we haven't given up. I keep posting videos on the neighborhood, WhatsApp group. So I say I'm not giving up hope. But today, one of my neighbors said, "Well, since she hasn't come back in a couple of months, I have an extra kitten." So
Uh-huh.
we're actually waiting on him to come and deliver a kitten to us tonight. So I'm excited about that. I cleared, a little place for the little one, and we're taking him. It's a boy to the vet tomorrow. So we'll see how that goes.
Good luck.
um, I know you work with innovators and innovation. Yeah, thanks. What is the most insane or crazy innovation you've seen over the years that you've worked in all of these innovation conferences? What's the most crazy thing you've seen?
I don't know. Most crazy thing. Oh, that's a tough question. I tell you what. I tell you what I think at the moment. So with the pandemic, so I'm going to bring it to the current situation now. With the pandemic, people have had to be very innovative, and I really like some of the things that I've been hearing, things like you know. So one of my favorite airlines is Singapore Airlines, and I love the fact that to keep their staff employed, to keep their chefs employed, to give people something to do, they've been allowing people to have meals on their planes. So parked at the airport in Changi. So you can have an economy class meal or a business class meal or a first class meal if you want to splash out. Um, and I know it's only a small thing, but I really like the fact that they have really thought about how they could how they can keep their staff employed, how they can provide a service even though they can't fly anywhere. And also the airport itself, they're doing like behind the scenes tours, especially for kids. I mean, who doesn't want to see behind the scenes of an airport? I mean, stuff like that is awesome to be able to do. And of course you can't do that regularly because the airport's so busy. So it's not a mind-blowing innovation or
Exactly.
anything like that, but it's some of the best innovations aren't. I just love these sort of stories about it's quite easy to sort of throw your hands up in the air, give up, and say or just complain the whole time. They're actually getting on and doing something which is providing a service. It's keeping people employed, and it's reminding people that they're still there, and they will be back. To me, that's better than the Qantas flights to nowhere, which they seem to do. This was. I don't get me wrong. I love flying, but the reason why I love flying is because I get to go to a different destination. I don't love flying because I like sitting on planes.
And coming back to where you took off
Yeah,
from, that doesn't
yeah,
sound very appealing to
yeah.
me either.
Although
But
they have changed it.
I did
They've
work
now
in
got
an
yeah,
airport,
yeah.
the
You
Malaysian
did, I know.
airports for a year and a half. And I think the most memorable part of that entire year and a half I was there was going into this long tunnel that leads to the baggage handling facility. So it's like, because it's so off, off the grid, nobody can see it, nobody can access it. And just the fact of being there and taking a tour underneath the whole airport, that was amazing to me. It's not something that not many people get to see. So you're saying if there is a behind the scenes tour, I think that would be really, really interesting.
Yeah, I would love to do something like that. I'd love to see how an airport operates, just the behind the scenes thing. I've done behind the scenes tours of hotels, for example, and they're fascinating. I mean, they are cities in themselves, and
Exactly.
you only ever see the sort of the plush bits and the tiny bits and
Shiny
the
parts,
bits that
yeah.
the shiny, but you don't see the behind the scenes, how things actually work. And that's fascinating. I remember when you were working for the Malaysian Airport Authority, and I think I was sitting at a departure lounge in where was I, in Langkawi, and sending you a photo of the inside of departure lounge.
Yeah.
And, these seats are too close together. I think he must have probably thought, why are you sending me stuff like this? I don't care.
No, that was fascinating. Yeah. And did I meet up with you inside the airport once?
No,
Can't remember.
I don't remember. No, I don't think I've not been to Malaysia other than that time I was in
Yeah.
Langkawi. I've not been to Malaysia since the Kuala Lumpur conference that we ran.
Yeah, because I have met friends from around the world who are flying in to Kuala Lumpur or just transiting, and because I had this red all access pass, that let me into whatever area inside the airport, so I could meet so many people from around the world during that time. That was cool. So I know as your job, you organize a lot of conferences. We'll go into a bit of that later. But what was the first forum or conference you had ever organized? What was the very first one?
The first one I ever organized. So that would have been back in 2003, which is kind of when I was, so ISPIM. I actually got involved with ISPIM. We've done a number of European funded projects, and part of what we have to do in the projects is to do dissemination. And I went to an ISPIM conference back in 1997. There you go, in San Sebastian,
Wow.
in Basque Country in Spain. And I really liked the people, so kind of I joined. And then 2001, there was a conference in Lappeenranta in Finland. One of the social evenings involved you having to sing a national anthem. So my parents, when I was 5 years old, took me to live in Zambia for 5 years. So I sang the Zambian national anthem. And because of that, I got invited onto the board of ISPIM. So, and then there was the conferences were sort of every other year, and then in 2003 it was like nobody had really put their foot forward to run a conference. Also at the time we had 12 members and I'd paid for 5 of them. We weren't very good at sort of getting members. We got 2,250 or something now, but anyway, back in those days we didn't have many members. So I said, look, I'll run a conference. And I remember doing it, and I did it on my own. Okay, there were only like 48 people or something that showed up, but at the time I wanted to sort of show off, because to me in conferences it's really important that wherever they're located that you show off some of the local culture. We have local food, you have local drinks, that's really important, and you do some local activities. So I took people to my local cricket club and made people play cricket, and of course being Britain it was rained off. So that's what I remember doing, and I remember just me doing it on my own, even though it was only for 48 people, having to run around, because in those back in 2003 we still had overhead projectors, if you remember. I remember having to carry one of those up between because we were on different levels. I held it at the Museum of Science and Industry in Manchester, which is where the first ever railway station is. I always find with those things it's strange. There's the first ever railway station, but who builds the second one? Because there's the first one, and then
Where does it
where do
go
you
to?
go? In
That's
fact,
right.
the first person ever killed by a train was just outside of the railway station, because obviously they weren't expecting a train to come along.
They'd never seen a train before. What is this? They get run over. Oh, that's
So yes,
fascinating. So yeah, and I really enjoy the conferences that you've organized because exactly of these things that you've mentioned. They're localized. You get to do activities. You listen to local music. Local bands are playing, and like you said, and you get to experience things as a local would. So I think those are very, very important. So thank goodness for learning the Zambian national anthem. Then good on
absolutely.
you. Good on you. So. Uh, if you were a movie director, what kind of movies would you make?
What kind of movies would I make? That's an interesting one. It'd have to be action, and that's what I like. I like action movies. Nothing with a plot that's too difficult to understand.
Turn off the brain for a couple of
Yeah, yeah,
hours.
absolutely. It's pure escapism. Movies for me. I don't want anything too cerebral, shall we say?
Good. So action-packed movies will await for some of those from you. So we talked a bit about this before we went live, but how is your life different today than it was a year ago? Yeah, a year ago.
Well, I have my frequent flyer miles are zero. Somebody used to travel a lot. Having to get used to not traveling is kind of it's been difficult. Not seeing family and friends has been particularly hard. But I don't want to focus on the sort of the negative aspects, because it's the same for everyone, really. On the positive side, I mean, we have we've learned more about our community. We've been able to actually have some time to sit down and do some things that probably needed looking at. So we've had time to do that. We've experienced different different mediums. For example, the stuff that we're learning now about putting on virtual events. That's something that we're not going to throw away just because we can meet in person again. That's not something that we're going to throw away. I mean, we've learned about the fact that we can now bring in speakers from across the world. We can reach people across the world as well. We don't necessarily have to it was always the case with an in-person event that we said to people, you've got to be there. If you're not there, you're not going to be able to attend. But now, we can take our conference through the hybrid format to different parts of the world. And people who might not be able to afford the entrance fee, or might not be able to afford the time, or don't want to spend so much time away from home, can now access a lot of the content. The other thing, it's quite funny, I was reminded by one of our speakers, Florian Kohlbacher, who works for Coca-Cola Japan. He was going to be a keynote speaker in 2018 when we ran the conference in Fukuoka, Japan, and he was called away at the last minute to do some business over in Korea. And he said to me at the time, this was December 2018. He said to me, "Look, I will do my keynote live by Zoom from Korea." And I turned around and said, no, sorry, you have to be there in person. And he reminded me of the fact that a year ago when we ran our virtual conference, he reminded me of the fact that you do remember I said that to you and you turned me down. And I said, yeah, okay, but things have changed. Is that now you want
me? Yep. I'm sure he'll remember that.
Yeah, and we were able to, when we put together our conference, our first virtual conference last year. We were able to go to people like Gary Hamel, Henry Chesbrough, Eric von Hippel. Eric von Hippel, for example, he told me, years ago, he said, if we're ever going to do a conference, you have to do it in Boston, because I'm not going to travel to your conferences. So we took our conference to Boston for Eric von Hippel. But Eric von Hippel then came to our virtual conference because we can get him now. And, it's now far more acceptable. Our view was always, if we're going to get a speaker to come along to a conference, and they should stay there for the full 3 days. In reality, people can't do that. People are busy. They don't have the time to do that. So, in our ideal world doesn't really exist in that case. So, so to sort of bring people in for a 30-minute talk and maybe, a little chat over coffee, that's kind of old school thinking. And we've woken up to the new possibilities now. And you could have a fireside chat with somebody sat on stage in a venue talking to somebody else on Zoom, for instance. That works perfectly well. We did some tours. We did a tour of the Alto Design Factory. We did a tour of CERN in Switzerland, where people were walking around with in one case a film crew, in another case a mobile phone, showing us, their venue, showing us, their operations and things. And that's kind of cool. You can't do that. We couldn't take 500 people to CERN, for instance, but we can do that virtually. So there's a whole load of things that we've learned that we're not going to throw away. And for us, it's important that we don't just say, we're going to go back to in-person events and we're going to forget about the virtual side of things, because we can run these side by side and actually end up giving people an even better experience. I mean, even other things like, in our conference, for example, we have a lot going on. We have like 10 parallel tracks. We have workshops. And for something like a workshop, for example, people don't sign up. We give people the freedom of choice. People don't sign up in advance to attend a particular session. They can go to something. And we've said to the sort of workshop leaders, you know what? With the fact that we're now learning all these new techniques and things, why not publicize your workshop beforehand, or have a pre-workshop meeting to get people to get involved in the subject matter of your workshop. Give them a task or something to do that. Get them to buy in already to the workshop. And these are things you can do. You can do that over Zoom. It costs you nothing, but it brings a whole load of advantages. And it will also entice people to come to your workshop because you're in competition with 9 other parallel streams. So there's a lot of things that people can do. I'm a little bit concerned about the fact that people aren't really using their imagination so much. They're very much, a lot of the online events are very similar. And that concerns me because they're not interesting. We're trying to make ours interesting. And certainly going forward into next year, we're trying to, next year and beyond, we're trying to make sure that we also engage a wider group of people, the virtual audience, whilst not cannibalizing our existing audience, because there's still people who are going to want to come and physically meet, because there is no substitute for that.
Of course. But it's great that you're looking at, different ways of innovative ways of engaging with people, because as you said, people are so used to what we're doing right now, which, maybe a couple of years ago would seem strange as well, because, this is the 13th edition of Culturism, and I've had people from 9 different countries be my guest. And as you said, if this was physical, there's no way I would have been able to fly to 9 different countries or fly them into Malaysia to have a chat with me for an hour. So it does not make any sense in that way.
I would have come. I would have come to Malaysia.
Of course. Any excuse. But what I could do is repurpose this content that I have as well, because I've had 12 wonderful conversations with people, which could be turned into different a podcast, for example, turn into books. People do this as well because they transcribe everything that is being discussed and they publish it. So but one of the big audiences that you have are researchers in the academia. So either they're PhD students or they're professors, wanting to publish their work and wanting to show the world what their research is about. How has this virtual sort of setup helped or hindered them in that way?
So I'm going to change the answer a little bit, because it's not just about the virtual setup. Over the years, so academics are our lifeblood. Researchers are our lifeblood. They're the ones who pay to present their research work at our conference. Okay, we also get stories from industry, and we get consultants, and we get policymakers, etc., coming as well. But we would not exist without our academic friends. And the standards, we're always looking to improve standards. It's funny, how things evolve. When we first started all of this, we used to give keynotes 30 minutes to speak. We used to give researchers 30 minutes to speak. They'd come along, and there'd be a session where we used to run 1.5 hour sessions, and we get 3 people speaking for 30 minutes.
Yep.
And I remember having to chair one of those sessions once, and it was back in, I think, 2008, thinking, wow, this is torture. It's torture for the audience, and it's torture for the presenters. I mean, these are people who are not necessarily used to speaking publicly, who are having now to speak for 30 minutes. It's quite difficult to do that. We've only been speaking for 25 minutes now. But of course we can also speak. But this is for a junior researcher. This is quite hard work to do. And so we actually reduced their time scale. Oh, another thing that we had was that at the time we had the event. This was in France. We had the event in 2 buildings, and we had traffic flow problems, because what people would do is say, right, because the presentations were 30 minutes long, people would say, right, well, I'm going to go to this one, then I'm going to go and visit my friend over here, and then my friend over here, and there would be like this enormous traffic flow between buildings, and it's very disruptive if you're in a session to be able to to present, and you've got people leaving and coming in. So we kind of rethought, how do we lock people in a room without locking the doors? And it was like, okay, we need to engage the audience a bit more. Let's get people to speak for 15 minutes instead of 30 minutes. And now we've gotten down to 10 minutes. And then let's have a group discussion at the end. Let's group the presentations by theme. And my colleague, Stefan Kohn, does that. And, I don't envy that job that he has to do, because obviously we get all kinds of presentations on all different subjects, and one of his jobs is to put together the program, and that's a really hard job, making sure that different the presentations hang together under a meaningful theme. But we solved our traffic flow problem basically overnight. Excuse me, because people stayed in the room, they were engaged, and now we've brought that down to kind of 10 minutes. Now, the virtual format, what that does, okay, people still get 10 minutes to discuss, to make a presentation. Yeah, we tell them that they can only have something like 5 slides, because it's not about presentation, it's not about PowerPoint. We want them to, we've tried to coach them about, you don't want the first slide to be, this is what I'm going to talk about. You don't need the table of contents slide, get rid of that, But academics tend to do that. The way they lay their work out, the way they lay their research out, the first thing is a table of contents. So whilst they write that in their research report, they also seems to make its way into presentations. So get rid of that, get to the point. People have got the papers that they can read. But with the virtual format, now for the first time ever, we've got everything recorded.
You can put
so
it
we
up.
Can say to people, you want to go and have a look at your presentation, go and see what you presented, or go and have a look. We can do some, this is what we think are good presentations. Go and have a look over at their presentations and try and follow them. Another thing I like as well is that Zoom isn't great for PowerPoint, because you can't put too many words on the slide because people can't read them. So it forces people to think about their slides. We don't want a slide to come up and then have people read the words on the slide. I mean, we don't want that in person. We don't want that virtually. So it gives people a chance to reflect back on the style of their presentation and the content of their presentation, and to make it better. So I'm hoping that we'll end up with better presentations, more focused presentations, and much better content, and then much better discussion and engagement afterwards.
That's wonderful. I have just realized, Ian, that we went straight into this, and some of the people in the audience don't know what you do. What is ISPIM? They've never heard of ISPIM, and they don't know what you do, and they don't know what your reach is and who your members are. So perhaps you should spend the next few minutes just explaining what you do, the organization that you work for, and the kind of members that you have. Go ahead.
Okay, sure. Yeah, so ISPIM, the International Society for Professional Innovation Management. We have a very long title and a very short acronym, so that's good. Essentially, we are a community of anybody who's passionate about managing innovation. So, if you are a researcher, or you're from university, business school, or you're from industry, policy making, consulting, tool providers, anything that has anything to do with managing innovation, then kind of we're the group for you to join, and it's free. We took the decision last year, by the way, to make our membership free because we wanted to be inclusive and not exclusive. And that wasn't a result of the pandemic. This was something that we had planned anyway. So come and join us. Come and get involved in our community. Within that community, we do a number of things. We have conferences, obviously. We run our main conference, which, the last time we ran an in-person one was 650 people in Florence, in Italy, in June 2019. And so we're around about the sort of 600, 700 person mark. Scientific-based conference. We have actually we're trying to get away from keynotes now. We always feel that's a bit sort of old school as well now. We want to sort of go more towards a sort of fireside chats, give people a bit more choice, get away from the Monday morning plenaries. We want to get away from that and to make it much more engaging. So we've got some ideas as to how to do that. But essentially we've got 10 parallel tracks, a series of scientific-based presentations, industry presentations. We have workshops. We have our own band, as you know. Our delegates decided 2012 to form their own band, so our social events are fantastic, second to none. We take our social events very, very seriously because it's about people. Essentially, we want to get people together, and we work hard during the day and we play hard in the evening. And that to us is really important. And we do all kinds of things, and it's important that we embrace the city that we're in. We embrace the local culture, food, drink, etc. That to us is incredibly important.
Yep. And quick shout out to Nidal Haikal here. Nidal is from New York, and he said he's joining. So I've already put up the link. It's right here in the chat, ispim-innovation.com. So we're welcoming a new member, Nidal Haikal from New York. Welcome, Nidal. So
awesome.
Yeah,
we were in 2009. We were in New York City in December. Yeah, it was fun. It was great. Following year we went to Quebec City in December. And that was great too. If you like snow.
That's cold.
But you see, what a great city that was. I mean, going to some of these places, we would never normally go to. And Quebec City was fantastic. Loved it there. I mean, talk about different cultures there. You've got the French culture and North American culture, and throw in the Canadian element as well. Fantastic place. Then I went to places like Fukuoka in Japan, another fantastic place to go to. A very vibrant city, particularly for the startup community, and the sort of, I think it's the 7th biggest city in Japan. Who knew? But yeah, and so we run conferences, and so our main one is in Europe in June. We do another one currently in Asia in December, but we also do some other events around sort of March time. We've run events in North America, in the US, in Canada, We've also, the last conference we ever ran actually was in Bangkok in March last year, right before the start of the pandemic. So
I was supposed to speak at that,
you
Ian, but
were.
I did pull out because of the pandemic. I didn't feel it was safe for me to travel at that time, even though the skies were still open, people were still flying. But I made a personal decision not to kind of go at that point.
It was a tough one. It was a tough one because we lost half the delegates, who didn't show up. The first day of the conference was March the 1st, which coincided with the first unfortunate death in Thailand. So obviously all the Thai universities and Thai companies were no longer allowed to come. But, I'm pleased we did it. There was the option was to cancel or to go ahead with it. I felt that we should go ahead with it because it's unfair for the people who are planning to come anyway. In actual fact, it was a great event, and we had some good fun. We had tuk-tuks with a police escort taking us through Bangkok.
And you do bill yourself as, is it the oldest or the largest, or is it both?
No, we're both
Innovation
oldest.
Society.
Yeah, we are, because so the whole thing started. It's great how stories start. So the whole thing started actually back in the early 70s in Norway and in Germany. A couple of professors got together and felt that there was a need to push forward the profession of innovation management. So they got together, formed almost like a think tank. Of intellectuals, and they carried on sort of running a conference here and there and writing papers and writing books together, doing the odd projects. 1983, the ISPIM was actually born officially, so it took them a while to give birth to the association. And then it sort of went from president to president. We had a structure where there was a new president every 4 years, and everything changed according to the new president and the new board. I became president in 2003, and then we abolished the presidency, and we incorporated it as a not-for-profit limited by guarantee company, and we've been growing ever since. But I think it's always important to remember your roots. And one of the things that I did was, before I became president, I went to visit our founder in Norway, a guy called Professor Knut Holt, and just to find out why he had started this whole thing in the first place, and to find out if the aims behind the rationale for founding this whole thing, whether that was still relevant now, and it really was. He actually sent us to the Norwegian National Archives, which is housed in the old U-boat pens in Trondheim. So they tried blowing them up after the war, and they couldn't blow them up because these things were bomb-proof, and all it did was blow out all the windows in the surrounding buildings, and so they turned it into the Norwegian National Archive. So I went with a friend of mine. We went in for this U-boat pen, and in amongst all the Norwegian National Archives, there were like 2 very thin files called ISPIM, and it had Knut Holt's definition of innovation in there, which is absolutely relevant now, as relevant now as it was then, probably even more relevant now than it was then. And so I was very privileged to meet him. Went to his 90th birthday. Sadly, he passed away when he was 91. But his family invited me back to give a eulogy at his funeral, which was a big honor for me. So I'm really pleased that I was able to meet the founder, and to really get into what ISPIM is all about. And we've kept this whole family feel the whole way through. We believe in people. We are people, and we are an association for people. So people are the number one thing for us. So when we do our events, it is very much a family, and we want you to join our family, and not in a weird way, but we want you to join our family and feel at home. We want you to meet old friends, new friends, and it's been amazing to see how people have collaborated. As a result of meeting at ISPIM, not only collaborated, had career progression through meetings that they've had at ISPIM, and it's been really pleasing. We have a policy of working with. We have some staff members. I should give a big shout out to Lucia, who is our senior coordinator and is the glue that keeps us all together. She's absolutely fantastic. But we have a number of sort of PhD students that we work with as well, very much on a part-time basis, and they rotate sort of every 2 or 3 years. They come and work with us, and they're fantastic to work with. They bring in new ideas. They're very enthusiastic. They've developed a whole junior researcher community. We also have other things. We have a whole bunch of special interest groups. We pick up on hot topics in innovation management, turn those into smaller groups, autonomous groups within ISPIM. So we have the likes of AI and innovation management, digital disruption, living labs, methods and tools, teaching and coaching innovation. They're very different, a lot of these groups, but they further that topic within, under the ISPIM umbrella, which leads to things like publications, we don't do seminars, webinars, podcasts, books, a whole load of stuff that happens. And really, when we say to people, become a member, we want people to get involved, and, they can suggest anything they want, as long as it's innovation management related, and we try and support them as best we can.
Right. So I hope coming out of tonight, you'll have a few new members, and we'll be talking about, as you said, initially it was a paid membership system, and you've abolished that, and you want a more inclusive society where more people can join. So then what would be the model for sustaining the organization, since you don't have membership fees?
Well, our membership fees, they were never really very high anyway. And actually what we found was the amount of time it took to administer the membership fees and the membership side of things is actually cheaper for us to abolish membership fees and use our time better in other areas. The way we fund it, we're a not-for-profit association, but that doesn't mean to say we're not for loss, and we do still have to feed our cats. We derive our income mainly from our events, and kind of we built in the membership fee into the events anyway. The events are paid for by delegate fees and by sponsorship, and we're involved in a number of sort of projects as well, outside of those conferences. But we've always work from home. We don't have an office. Overheads are very low, so it doesn't take a great deal to sustain us. But that's essentially how we keep things going. The membership fee was it just didn't make sense. I think the days of 1st of January, you get your invoice in the post, pay your membership fee for another year. I think those days have gone, unless of course there are different types of association. If you're in a medical association and you have to be a member, that's different from ours. We were always nice to be a member of, but not it wasn't essential for your profession.
Wasn't essential.
So when you're in the nice to have category, you find that it doesn't make any sense anymore to send out membership dues on the 1st of January. So kind of we changed it around to people then pay for what they want. So if they want to attend a workshop, they pay for that. They want to attend the conference, they pay for that. And our conference has always been, the model has always been everybody pays something. We try and keep it relatively low, but everybody pays something. So if you're a presenter, the North Americans can't get their head around this at all, particularly North American consultants. If they're running a workshop, they actually have to pay to run the workshop. We don't pay them. and we don't, and they don't get in for free. We've kind of, it's kind of our principle is that everybody pays something, therefore everybody contributes, and so it's then a lower price overall. But of course, we need sponsorship and things for our events now. And who knows what's going to be like in future as well, whether it's going to be more difficult to get sponsorship, or whether venues are going to be more expensive, or maybe the capacities of venues may be limited now because there's going to be a need to have a bit more social distance or a bit more ventilation. Who knows? We don't know the state of play after the pandemic,
Right.
but
Right.
our principles will never change. They will still stay the same.
Yep. And as you said, people have gotten used to doing online work and meeting online and having webinars and all of this. What I've seen what's interesting is that, what I'm doing right now, uh, traditionally would only be done by, let's say, a TV station, right? Because
Yeah.
only a TV station has a studio and can call in guests and have a host and broadcast. But now I'm broadcasting globally. We have viewers and audience from all over the world. Nidal's from New York. We have Vishnu probably from India. We have several people from Malaysia. And this model where every person can become a broadcaster, can become a media house in their own right. Uh, I think maybe innovation managers or the traditional audience that you had, perhaps, like you said, it's hard for some of them to even stand on stage for 15 minutes. It's difficult for them to communicate. So, and for all of the conferences that I have been speaking, it was mainly about how does a technical person communicate their story to a non-technical audience, because I think that's key. I don't know, is that something still of interest to your members, or how to get the word out?
Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. This format I think is great. Everybody can become a talk show host, and yours is even better because you have cats. You're not allowed to take your cats to a normal talk show. So I think things like this are great. I think that I think in future people are going to they're going to be much more selective about travel. Is there a need to go to a meeting? If you look at the events industry, is there a need to go on a fam trip? Do you need to go to a destination just to look around a whole bunch of hotels? What if, for example, you were able to view those hotels virtually, and then you still need to go? I mean, I would never, we would never sign up with a venue for a conference without having seen it in person. But at least that way I could do my research beforehand. I don't need to be dragged around a whole load of places that I feel is unsuitable. So there's that kind of element that I think is going to be important. In terms of conferences, I don't think there's going to be as much money around. I think people are going to be more selective as to what they attend. I think there's going to be a little bit of a backlash. I don't think people are too into virtual conferences. It's kind of seen as a necessary evil at the moment. I think people are desperate to meet face to face again. But they're going to be much more selective. It might have been in the past that they had a budget to go to, I don't know, six events, and now they've got a budget to go to 2. So they're going to be much more selective as to which ones they attend. And it's going to be those that they feel is going to provide, the best value for them, both in terms of being able to present their their research or their industry story, and also where they can have the most connections, and that's where for an academic, for instance, our conference is not the most academic conference. There are Academy of Management in the US, Canada. But at ours, it's an enormous event over there. At ours, there's much more chance to meet people, and that could be, not only become friends, but can also, help you in whatever it is that you need in your career.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that, there'll be quite a few that fall by the wayside. And I think those of us that are, thinking ahead and thinking a little bit differently will be the ones that survive. But it's not going to be plain sailing at all, and we have to definitely make sure that that the events that we do put on really talk to a sort of wide audience and we engage people.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, things like this, I think, will continue, and I think it's great that they exist. And it is. I watch these types of events, whereas probably I wouldn't have done that before. And I think in future I will continue to do so.
Right.
To me, it's better. I love the sort of. There's a reason why chat shows exist on TV. People like watching chat shows, right? And your job is really difficult. I mean, my job's easy. I'm just talking, probably a little bit too much, but your job is the difficult job as the host, and there's a great deal of skill in that. But if you get a really good host, then you get a really good conversation, and that's why we're trying to change things in our conference. Rather than have a keynote stand up, present his or her work for 30 minutes, no questions, I may as well just, and it'd be the same thing that they presented at the last conference, maybe with the odd word changed. To go from that to getting rid of the PowerPoints to actually having a chat with someone like yourself, that's so much more interesting. And, that can be done live. So it can be done in person, or as I said, it can be done with you sitting on a stage or me on a stage and you in KL, on Zoom, all that kind of stuff, that all works now, and it's all acceptable.
Yeah. And I'm excited to be invited to your next event. Maybe tell people about this next conference coming up.
Well, okay, so our next conference, it was supposed to be in Berlin. Last year was supposed to be in Berlin. We pushed it back to this year. Nobody really thought that in 2021 we're going to still be in this, but we are. So this year, it's going to be in virtual Berlin. So again, it's our annual conference, takes place in June. And again, we're expecting, over 600 people or so to attend with our sort of 10 parallel sessions. Last year, we didn't know what we were doing. Not a clue what we were doing. Probably about this time last year, sitting there sweating, looking at all these different platforms, thinking, what on earth do we do? We just didn't have a clue. But, you can't just throw your hands up and say, I give up, because then there'll be no ISPIM anymore. And, a lot of people are relying on us, our community, to bring them together. So we did. We figured it out, and we put on a virtual conference. I'm at my dining table now, where I had 11 laptops and various children of mine, well, I only have 2, sort of operating them and switching sessions on and off, and we used Zoom, and I had wires coming through my lounge, and it was great. And we put on a good event. We worked with a virtual team, and it actually worked really well, and people really enjoyed it. We were even able to have some social events as well with our band, and a band from Portugal coming in as well. So it worked. But we're thinking about this year. Oh yeah, the other thing is I kind of thought, well, who do we get to speak? We don't need to have coffee breaks and lunch breaks anymore, because it's now a virtual world. We tried to so kind of people said to us, you need to take into account the different time zones. You need to make it shorter because it's virtual. It's like, well, why do we need to make it shorter? You shouldn't do things on a Monday. Yeah, why not? We always do things on a Monday. So we do Monday to Wednesday. We tried to replicate our program as best we could from the in-person event. We already had that in place. So we figured, if it ain't broke, why fix it? Let's try and replicate that. But instead of having a sort of Monday morning keynote, I thought, well, let's see who we can get. So I sort of cast my net far and wide. And we ended up, instead of 5 keynotes, I ended up with like 33, including people like Gary Hamill and which was great. Got people like Frank Stephenson, the car designer. So some people who are a little bit different as well. and it was great. Yeah, I'm not very good at saying no. So everybody said yes. I wasn't expecting everybody to say yes. They all said yes, and so we had to like fit them in the program, which was interesting. But this year we didn't want to do that. We didn't want to have the same people back again. We're an innovation conference. We have to change things a little bit, and I've seen things like what we're doing now work. So we thought, let's build in some fireside chats. And as I said to you, let's not have you speak to somebody else we already know. Let's have you speak to somebody you've always wanted to speak to, or somebody who you feel would have a great message. And so it's worked out. We've got something like, I think we've got let me think, something like 20 different fireside chats now included in the conference. And of course, everything's recorded. So it doesn't matter if you put things in parallel, because, there will be a chance to view it as a recording later. And then, the conference is meant to be in Berlin. So, it's now going to be virtual Berlin. So we're going to have some virtual live tours of places in Berlin. So we're obviously planning those at the moment. So rather than sort of remove Berlin altogether from the conference, we've decided it's going to be, in Berlin. We've got some local partners we're working with there, and we'll be going live to Berlin as much as we can. So people will be able to see a bit of the Berlin innovation ecosystem there, and learn a bit more, even though they can't physically be there. We will go to Berlin at some point in the future. But for now, this is all we can really do. But we still, we want people to have an experience of Berlin, even if it's only virtual. But then, and then to change the format a little bit. We always like to change the format. We like to keep people on their toes. We like to give people a chance to get a good experience.
Well, I'm honored that you've invited me and asked me who I would like to speak to. And I'm happy to say that the person I chose, my first choice, agreed, and she's Shanae Moray. Many from this audience would probably know her because I mention her a lot. She's my mentor here on LinkedIn. And I do believe that this sort of communities, like the one we're building on LinkedIn right now, is the future. And so for innovation managers, for your academics, for your PhD students, they need to be good at this, because this is where the community is being built, and this is where the word's going to get out, and how they're going to get collaborators and sponsors and all of the thousands of different moving parts, need to be built like what we're doing now, online in a massive platform. And Shanae has built, she's now at, 850,000 followers on
Wow.
LinkedIn in maybe 2.5 years. So she knows how it works. So I think she'd be a valuable speaker for your audience, because she's going to bring something totally new and something very, very relevant, and something that is much needed, moving into the future. So I'm excited about that. I'm also wary of my role as a host and also as a timekeeper, because it's almost to the hour. Time flies when you're having fun, and it's so great to catch up with you, Ian. And we, I don't know when, but we are going to meet again. One of the things you mentioned about is, your conferences are fun and accessible, and also you really get to know people. And I'm testament to that. I've met so many people in ISPIM conferences that I consider friends, that I would happily have in my home, and I'd love to visit very soon. So I hope we do get to fly very soon, and I hope to see you one day. So maybe if you could just wrap up your thoughts in a minute, and for our audience.
Yeah, absolutely. These are challenging times for everyone. But there is light at the end of the tunnel. There is a way out of all of this. I think communities like ours play a big role in that. We are bringing people together from all over the world. We are a very, very diverse group, and part of what makes me tick is the fact that I love to travel. I love to I love to experience different cultures. I love to have friends all over the world. I mean, I have more friends who are non-British than British. I love that. To me, that's important. If I don't have that, then I'm miserable. So I think it's really important, particularly with all the problems going on in the world as well, not just the pandemic, that we are able to get together and to experience different cultures, to meet with different types of people. I'm really pleased to say that for our conference lineup this year, half the thought leaders are women. We've got people from different parts of the world as well. Wasn't that long ago when we'd have our lineup, it'd be like 5 middle-aged white men from Europe, and we're trying to get away from that. I'm really happy that we've been able to do that, and to give people a really good experience. And I think that's what it's all about: sharing knowledge, sharing experiences, getting insights, getting excited. And that will come back, but the virtual side of things is here to stay as well, and I think we should embrace that.
Exactly. Well said. And it was, again, wonderful chatting with you. We need to do this again. And I really appreciate you coming on board for this hour. To my audience, thank you so much, everyone, for spending this evening with us, or this afternoon if you're in England. The chat's always there, so you can revisit, Ian, the comments on this post, and you can repost it in your own feed and also in the ISPIM page. And we wish everybody safe, be happy, take care of yourselves and your families and your cats, and stay safe always. So goodbye, Ian. Take care. Take care, everyone.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.